G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Living with BC. Today we're going to have a chat about Orphan X Series by Greg Hurwitz, and at the end I'll have a little update about my March challenge. That'll just be really quick. But into the Orphan X Series, 6 books in total. Orphan X, The Nowhere Man, Hellbent, Out of the Dark, Into the Fire, and Prodigal Son. I've heard rumors that maybe there might be more coming, but as far as I know, that's all there is. So just finished Prodigal Son a little while ago, maybe a week ago. And so let's talk about it. So the stories follow Evan Smoke, also known as Orphan X or the Nowhere Man. He was recruited as a kid. I think he was about 12 when he was recruited into the orphan program, where kids were taken out of orphanages and trained to be government black ops assassins. He's now retired and spends his time and his skill set helping people get out of trouble. Usually they're, in with gangs or organized crime, things like that. He uses his skills and expertise and helps them get out of a bad situation. Throughout the series, he also clashes with other orphans and government agents who are hunting him for various reasons. Evan's character is great. He lives by this moral code instilled in him by his father figure handler, which make him this really awesome combination of empathic human and ultimate assassin killer. He's got a form of OCD, which we see by him needing to keep his penthouse apartment spotlessly clean. Everything goes in its place. His clothes are folded meticulously. He's got a taste for expensive vodka, and as you'd expect, he's trained in multiple variants of martial arts. We find out in the first book that Evan uses the cover as an owner of a commercial cleaning supply business, which is a pretty good cover because, as it's pointed out in that novel, that no one knows anything about commercial cleaning products, so no one's going to be questioning him on it, and so his cover's never going to get blown. So that's a pretty good one. We also find out that Evan is, all in all, he's pretty forgettable, physically speaking. He's described as average height, not too handsome, fit, but not overly muscular. If anyone's read the Bourne novels, Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, it reminded me in the early pages of Bourne Identity, where that talks about Jason Bourne having undergone plastic surgery and facial reconstruction, so he doesn't have any discerning features. He doesn't have a big nose or scar on his face, Technicolor hair, a tattoo, whatever it might be, something that can make him easily identifiable. Evan is the same in that regard, in the fact that if you did witness something, describing him to the authorities would be a pretty difficult task. On that note, though, the other orphans aren't the same. Like they usually kind of stand out. One of them's described as ridiculously muscular. The other female orphan is constantly described as having, this killer body that draws attention to her. So that's a little bit, I don't know, kind of like a little bit unbelievable for me there. Other orphans in particular should be able to blend in as easily as Evan can. I mean, Evan might be better, but they're not going to be that far behind, really. They're trained to the same level. Similar in the sense, as I just mentioned, Jason Bourne, Bourne was the best, but, the other guys were still pretty good. Like even though you're second or third in the program, you're still going to be ridiculously good at your job. The writing in this is awesome. It's crisp, it's clear, it's super sharp. Sentences are short. From a writing standpoint, sometimes it's a little bit jarring because you're like, well, the sentence shouldn't be structured like that. But it does its job for an action thriller where you want the writing to be sharp because it keeps you suspense, makes it seem like everything's fast-paced. The only issue I have, and it is small, but after reading 6 books, is every time we're introduced to an item, it's labeled. It's kind of like name dropping. So at first, every book, the author will reintroduce Evan, who he is. He was in the orphan program. He's now retired. He, helps people in desperate need, blah, blah, blah. And also, we know he carries an Ares 1911 pistol and he has a Strider knife. Carries a Roam Zone phone and drives a Ford F-150 pickup. That's fine. But then every other time you reference it, you can just say his pistol, his knife, his phone, his truck. But every time Evan does anything, whether he reloads his pistol, checks the ammunition in his pistol, holsters it, unholsters it, whatever, it's the Ares 1911. It's not just a pistol. Or same thing with his truck or his knife or his phone. It's always the Roam Zone phone or the Ford F-150. After a while, it just gets a little bit like, look, I know what truck he drives. I know what gun he carries. I know what knife he carries. Yada, yada, yada. Let's like cut to the chase here. But that's a very minor thing. And it's only because I read the books in quick succession. If you didn't do that, it might not be an issue. In terms of plot, these are really well thought out, realistic, believable stories. Very rarely is Evan put into a situation where you wouldn't be able to believe that someone of his caliber can't get out of. You know, there are obviously hairy situations, and he comes up against some real challenges. Nothing's ever really like a walk in the park, but you know, someone of that skill set should be able to get out of all the situations that he gets himself into, even if he comes out with scrapes and bruises at the end of it. Some things are quite close, and you know, after it happens, I'm like, well, mate, like you almost died there. But it's never a situation of like those corny action movies of the 80s and 90s where they're, you know, inside the middle of a nuclear reactor as it explodes and they still somehow run out of it and they're completely safe. And you're just like, that's ridiculous. That would not happen. You'd be dead. But yeah, that doesn't happen in this book, so, or any of these books, so that's really good. The books also have this really great to and fro between Evan and Mia, who is his downstairs neighbor. She's a single mom. She's got a kid who's like 8 to 10 throughout the story, throughout the series. They sort of get together on again, off again kind of thing. Really great because it's kind of forbidden love, because obviously what he does, he's operating in a very illegal sphere, and she is a district attorney. So if she ever found out exactly what it is that he did, she'd be forced to prosecute. Like she's sworn to, you know, to uphold the law. It's played out really well, in my opinion, with Evan having never really had a normal life. So he's never sort of had to interact in a situation where he just goes to dinner with a woman, or you know, goes into her apartment and like there's cartoons playing on the TV, and he's kind of like, what's going on? Like at that kid's age, he was learning how to assemble and disassemble rifles, you know, like, so that's a really interesting facet, and it kind of pulls at the heartstrings a little bit because he obviously wants to have a normal life, but how can he when he's got this skill set and does what he does, and you know, other assassins are hunting him? There were a couple things I struggled with throughout the series. One of the main ones was that Evan's main rival comes from the same like boys group home, the orphanage that he was recruited from. Look, I mean, I know it's supposed to sort of add depth to his character and kind of go, oh look, they were both came from the same upbringing. Look at how Evan turned out versus how this other guy turned out. But for me, it's quite corny, and particularly in the last book, there's a lot of, you know, history kind of being brought up. He meets a number of people from that same group home, and I like, on one hand it's good because, you know, Evan does remark throughout the series that, you know, he would have either ended up in jail on drugs or potentially dead by now if he hadn't had the opportunity that he had. If he hadn't been selected for the orphan program and trained the way he was, he wouldn't be living the life that he is. But at the same time, it just felt really kind of corny that we're, you know, taken back to that, you know, like that group home situation. I don't know. It didn't work for me. Maybe it'll work for you, but for me, it sort of, it actually kind of took away from the story rather than adding to it. Similar sort of thing, I think the third or fourth book, we meet Joey Morales. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's really interesting because she's a teenage girl. She was once in the orphan program, but then failed, and she was going to be terminated. And Jack Johns, who is Evan's handler, father figure, wants Evan to save her. And he does. Like, I'll just tell you that now. He saves her. Spoiler, sorry. And because she's sort of, I guess, say, half trained in the orphan program, she's obviously got a bunch of skills, particularly to do with technology and computers and hacking and things like that. She's really, really talented there. And that sort of creates a bit of a, I guess, like a playful rift between the two of them. Like I mentioned before, Evan having his OCD, and you know, she's like a teenage girl, so she leaves like chip packets and crumbs everywhere, and he walks in and there's like, you know, a coaster with like a juice ring. Oh, sorry, not a coaster, a cup like with like a juice ring around it, and he's like, what's going on? Like, my sanctuary's kind of being invaded. That was okay, but towards the end of the books, it kind of got a little bit too much. All in all, I love these books. I think they're really, really good. Even though there's a couple things I just mentioned there did kind of grate on me a little bit, I can get over it because Evan's, look, firstly, he's likable. He's easy to cheer for because he's, you know, all right, he's committing crimes, he's doing illegal activities, but he's kind of like Batman in a way, like he's helping people out. And it's believable, or at least believable enough that this technology is available and these things are around. You know, I mean, there's a lot of crazy systems and programs out there that we don't know about. So, you know, when you come across something, you're like, oh, like, does the government really have that in, you know, in research and development? It's like, it wouldn't surprise me. You know, nothing is too crazy that I'm going like, oh, that technology doesn't exist. I'm like, well, maybe it does. I don't know. Um, I'd give them overall like a 4.5 as a whole. Some are better than others, obviously. You're going to get that. Like Prodigal Son, I'm probably going to put down to like a 3.5 just because of the sort of line that it took with the boys' home and kind of reuniting that kind of thing. But Orphan X and the Nowhere Man, they're both 5 out of 5. So overall, kind of 4.5, I reckon, for the whole series. Apparently, there's talks that it's either going to be made into a TV show or a film. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I've heard rumors that there could be more books coming. So that'll be exciting. All right, on to my March challenge, which was to write 1,000 words every single day. Happy to announce, ding, 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 tick that one up as a win. Yeah, pretty easy. I mean, you know, having taken some time off work, I was able to focus on that. Didn't get a huge amount done in terms of my work in progress. Obviously, I did add some chapters to that, but overall, it was kind of mostly rewrites. But I still wrote 1,000 words every day, so that's a win. Happy with that. Happy with that progress. Obviously, it's into April now, so working on that one. I'll let you guys know how I go in another video or two. Also reading halfway through 1984, which is brilliant, particularly in the current climate. So I will have a review of that once I'm finished. Anyway, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. If you like the video, hit the like button. I'll see you next time. As always, stay cool.